Fandom Academy, episode 10. We are in double-digit episodes already. I cannot believe it. It feels like we did episode 1, like, a couple days ago. It's crazy. But here we are, and we've made it to the end of The Last of Us. Episode 9 aired this weekend, and it was a big episode. This concludes season 1 of the adaptation, and we will get into that later. But I'm joined today, as always, by my two co-hosts, CJ and Jaden. How are we feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I'm home for spring break, so I have my setup back, and I'm excited to talk a lot of stuff today. We have a pretty packed show.
I'm good. I'm really excited. Like CJ said, a lot of stuff to talk about today, so we'll go ahead and get right into it.
Slay. And today we are joined by a special guest, Agents of Fandom's very own Sheriff. Adam is here to talk about The Last of Us. Adam, how are we feeling?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. I love what y'all got going on here. And, you know, you guys have been absolutely killing the coverage of The Last of Us and everything else. So I'm excited to talk a little Last of Us, a little Mandalorian, and maybe some other stuff too. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and we're excited to have you. We have so many thoughts on The Last of Us finale, and we can talk about the whole season. I feel like it's come by so quick. Like, episode 1 feels like simultaneously so long ago, but also like it could have been yesterday. It's crazy. We'll get into the last episode soon, but something pretty big happened last night. It was the Oscars. It happened. Many people won, many people got snubbed. Let's talk about all of it. So, what was everyone's favorite moment from the night? It could be a win, it could be a celebrity pairing for presenting, anything that happened. Jaden, let's start with you. What was your favorite moment from the Oscars last night?
One of my favorite moments, and I guess it was more of just like a kind of throughout the night sort of thing, is that I was super excited and very happy to know that I was right when I said that Everything Everywhere All at Once would absolutely sweep, and as they should. Such a good movie, and everybody that deserved awards for that, the people that got awards for that, very well deserved.
Agreed. Adam, what was your favorite moment from the night?
Oh, it's really, really hard to pick just one. Key winning for Best Supporting Actor was so incredibly emotional. I mean, I was breaking down watching that. But Brandon Fraser winning as well was really, really good too. I wish I could say that I felt the same about Jamie Lee Curtis winning, but I just don't. But I would probably say it's definitely got to be one of those two. And really just to see, I really enjoyed the directors, you know, the Daniels going up there and talking, and I think it was somebody else, like the editor, I believe, went up there and talked. Like just everybody that worked on that movie had so much really unique insight to give, and it deserved the suite, and they did such a great job going up there and talking about it. They did a great job with the movie, so it was everything dealing with everything everywhere all at once. It's all at the top for me.
Brandon and Key were so adorable that whole night.
Oh,
like they were so awesome to watch. Like they're so supportive, they're so cool. Okay, go ahead.
Amazing. I think Jamie Lee Curtis's win has been one of the most controversial things. Like, seeing all the discourse about it on Twitter has been definitely an interesting thing to witness. But anyways, congrats to her. CJ, what was your favorite moment from the Oscars this year?
Like they said, it's hard to pick one. Me and Jay were talking about this on our predictions podcast, which you can go back and watch and see how we were mostly pretty accurate on that. So go us. But Everything Ever All at Once had a great night. I still don't agree with the Jamie win. I definitely think it should have gone to Steph or Angela, but I'm happy for Jamie, and she finally got an Oscar. Jamie Lee's a legend, so it's cool to see. But my favorite moment of the night is between two things. Number one, Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield presenting together, because what an iconic duo. But number two, Rihanna's performance of Lift Me Up was phenomenal. Rihanna is everything. She was stunning, and that performance was mesmerizing. That's such a powerful song, dedicated to such a powerful person that we all miss so dearly. So seeing that performance, honoring him, honoring the legacy that he left, as well as promoting that song, which is such a beautiful song, was really awesome to see.
Yeah, I agree. Rihanna looked incredible, and that performance just gave me chills, like, immediately. She was just so amazing, and the whole Chadwick tributes throughout the night were just incredible to see. I think my favorite moment was definitely Pedro and Elizabeth Olsen presenting together. When they announced that they were presenting, there is a video from them at D23 like years ago, just like hugging on the carpet, and I was like, I know they're secretly besties. So seeing them reunite at the Oscars was just amazing. And obviously I love them both so much, and Pedro slayed. We all know that's my man. Seeing him at the Oscars was incredible. And I just hope that he gets to hold his own one day, which I'm sure he will, as he has shown he is capable in The Last of Us, and I just hope that will be him one day. But the pairings for these presenting were incredible, as we've said, Andrew and Flo, Pedro and Elizabeth, and also Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors was an incredible pairing. Like, they were on point this year, and yeah, I feel like all the wins were deserved, and it was just so amazing seeing all the acceptance speeches. That's always my favorite part. I love to go back and watch them all. But it was a great night, and I feel like this has been one of the best Oscars that we've witnessed in a while, especially after last year. Side eye. But yeah, that was great. Well, that will conclude our Oscars talk.
One thought, final though, on the Jonathan Majors discussion. Last night, if you were watching, you might have noticed his tie was a little weird. And I noticed it too until our friend and editor-in-chief, TJ Zwarek, sent me a message on Twitter today, sending me a picture of Victor. This is a Loki spoiler, by the way. So, or not Loki, Ant-Man and the Wasp. If you haven't seen it, mute for like 10 seconds. But the tie is the same tie that Victor Timely was wearing in the exact same way in the second post-credit scene, the one featuring Loki and Mobius. So,
wow,
maybe it's a hint, maybe it's a coincidence. But TJ pointed that out to me, and I was like, whoa. And that just makes me love Jonathan Majors even more. Just wanted to point that out.
That is such an amazing detail.
That's
if
awesome.
that was deliberate, that is incredible.
Like, the fact that TJ was able to point that out is crazy.
Accident. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I love that. But yeah, Jonathan and Michael slayed. I'm actually going to pass this next part on to CJ because Scream 6 came out in the past week, and I know that you guys have seen it, so I will hand this over to you to share your thoughts.
Yes, the Scream franchise is back. Our beloved Ghostface and our main characters are back, ready to solve another mystery. And this one was probably one of my favorites. I know Adam hasn't seen it yet. It's just me and Jaden. But this film has a lot to offer. It's great action. There's some great humor moments. And the characters are so awesome. Jenna Ortega and was phenomenal in this movie, as well as Josh Segarra, who we saw in She-Hulk earlier this year. I thought those two were the two standouts of the film. Seeing Josh as Danny was so cool, because seeing Josh Segarra come up from Arrow to She-Hulk and now on the big screen as a main character in such a big franchise like Scream is so awesome to see. I love that man. And Jenna Ortega, too, starting on Disney Channel. I used to watch her in Stuck in the Middle, and seeing her now being this huge iconic figure, hosting Saturday Night Live in these Scream movies. And this might be one of the best Scream movies, too, so it's really awesome for both of them. And the violence and gore in this one is really great too. It's mostly practical, I think, if not all practical. So I always think practical effects look better and bigger too. I love them. Jaden, what did you think of Scream 6?
So I actually went into this not having seen really any of the movies before it. I fully went in knowing that I would watch them afterwards, and I think, although it's like the sixth movie of the franchise, I think that was a good idea, only because now that I've seen the this past movie, and then going through and watching all the little things, all the little Easter eggs start to come in, and I'm just like, oh, wow, I know what this is going to mean, or I know what this means now that I watch this back, kind of thing. So that was really fun. I had a good time doing that, binging it this weekend. But I thought it was great. Just like kind of what CJ was saying, Jenna Ortega, I've seen on Disney Channel as you know, as I was growing up, and just, it's just first full circle moment. You know what I'm saying? She's my age, close to it. And just to see the things that she's accomplished in honestly such a short amount of time, it's incredible. And it's great. I had a fun time watching this movie.
Yeah, I definitely think this one was a really cool one as a part of the franchise, because it really does connect back to every single movie that came before. And that's always nice. I hadn't seen a Scream movie before February, and I binged 2 through 5 literally last week. So if you need something to binge, the Scream movies are so bingeable. They're such a fun, wild ride. And even if you're not like the biggest fan of horror, I don't necessarily love calling these films horror, because I feel like it's more to that. It's like a comedy horror type mix. It's like a mystery too. So it's definitely a fun binge. I recommend doing it. And you see these characters that start in the first one and they're still making their impact in the sixth movie. For better or for worse, it's a great time. I love Scream 6. And if you haven't seen it, please go check it out. I think this one has one of the better twists I've seen in the Scream movies too. And the setting of New York just brings so much life into the franchise too. And of course, I can't say it enough, this cast is phenomenal. So please go check this one out. And yeah, we'll head it back to you, Layla.
Nice. You've made me want to binge all the Scream movies now. Like, that might be my task for the next week. I'll get back to you next week if I achieve it. Another thing that we want to talk about is Shazam comes out this week, and we will be joined by a special guest next week. P Films will be joining us to talk about the movie. I am seeing it tomorrow at a screening. I'm sure maybe some of you guys will be seeing it. Understandable if not, but we'll talk about it, and we will obviously be talking about The Mandalorian as well. Speaking of The Mandalorian, Episode 2 is the most recent episode that we need to cover on this podcast. I believe this was a stronger episode than Episode 1. I loved it a lot. Bo-Katan and Din's kind of dynamic is expanding greatly. I'm so intrigued to see where this is going to go. We got a big reveal at the end of something very exciting, which changes a lot of Bo-Katan's beliefs. But let's go through and give our spoiler-free reactions to the episode. Adam, I will start with you. What did you think of Episode 2?
Oh man, this is like, it's got to be one of the best 3 to 4, maybe 3 episodes of The Mandalorian, like through 3 seasons, through 2 and 2 seasons, 2 episodes. I mean, I can't think of 3 episodes that are better than this. Like this whole, the misdirection, I think, is the thing that I enjoy the most because, I mean, for months, everybody's been talking about the central plot of this season was going to be getting to Mandalore for Din to absolve, and then so he can truly be a Mandalorian and all this stuff. And then it's like, we're here in Episode 2, and he's already doing this. So now, not only did we get a great episode of television, but we got something that's like, now we have no idea where we're going for. And we don't know, if you were to ask me right now, like, who do I think is more fit to rule Mandalore, Din or Bo? After the showing that we saw from Bo-Katan in this episode, I mean, you got to say Bo. So it's just like, I mean, and I feel like it's not, that can't be where they take it for the whole season. Din Djarin is the Mandalorian. He's the titular character. So it's not going to end with him, getting the short end of the stick and somebody else, running the show. But I'm so interested to see where we go going forward because they just put in such a great episode here with so much misdirection. This is one of my favorite episodes of The Mandalorian, top 3 for sure.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off what you said, like, we thought the whole season was going to be the journey to Mandalore, and we're already here. And it's like, I feel like most of the clips we saw in the trailer have already been seen in the season.
They're all gone.
Which makes me terrified for what is coming. Like, I have no idea what to expect, and it's stressing me out. But anyways, Jaden, what did you think of Episode 2?
Yeah, I don't know. It just made me kind of think a little bit more into that whole redemption thing that he's been, questing for. Because it's like, now that you're here in Episode 2, doesn't that mean you're redeemed, right? What else could you possibly be redeeming, right? So that's really exciting. I'm hyped to see how that unfolds. I loved Bo-Katan in this. First of all, her slicing up that weird creepy crawly thing with the Darksaber was pretty cool. Also, her dynamic with Grogu was really cool. I really appreciated that, and there's a lot of cool moments in this, and I loved it. One of the greatest Mandalorian episodes that I've seen. So yeah, it was great.
I agree. CJ, I know you have a lot of thoughts on Bo-Katan in particular. What did you think of her in this episode?
Mother, adopt me. But she's my ruler of Mandalore. No matter what happens this season, I am obsessed with Bo-Katan. Since the minute we first met her this season, even last season, I've been obsessed. Her and her crew of Mercedes Monet, formerly Sasha Banks, and just seeing them together is great. I hope we get her back this season. But just seeing Bo-Katan slay with she got picked up the Darksaber in this episode and she kicked ass with it. She was clearly more skilled than Den in terms of holding that, which leads to some interesting plot points going forward if they still are teasing the Civil War conflict that we might get between the two. So it'll be interesting to see. But if, as I've said many, many times, if we see those two come to blows, I'm Team Bo-Katan all the way.
This makes me so conflicted because obviously Bo-Katan is better with the Darksaber. She's probably more fit to be a ruler than poor little Din, who's just been on his own his whole life. But that's my man. Like, I don't know where to go with this. Like, it's so conflicting in my brain. Like, obviously I want him to come out on top, but Bo-Katan is making me, like, question myself right now. Like, she's making this very difficult, but she definitely slayed this episode. The way she strutted off her throne, like, ready to, like, get rid of Din, I was like, yeah, you tell him to fuck off, like, you go. And just, like, seeing Grogu, like, drive the ship and, like, find his way to Bo-Katan, I was like, oh, he's so smart. Like, he's learning. That's my son. I'm so proud of him. But yeah, and I just kept laughing at Din this episode, which is kind of really bad, but he was just being so pathetic. Like, I feel really bad for saying this, but he is, like, I love him on anything. He's my favorite character, but get a fucking grip. Like, he was just laid there this episode. And I was just laughing at him, but... Go ahead.
I got a little theory question for y'all, and I wrote a little bit about this in my review for the agentsofandom.com. What a great website. So, you know, we saw Din use the Darksaber in the Book of Boba Fett, and then it's like he's dragging it behind him like it weighs 100 pounds. He can't even hardly pick it up. And I think everybody's been thinking when we get here, like, surely he has to have improved with it a little bit, right? No, he hasn't. And what we all thought in the Book of Boba Fett, because she says to him, like, your mind is distracted, and if you try to fight against the blade, like, you will win. You have to fight your opponent, not fight the blade. I think everybody thought that the thing that was weighing on his mind so much was that he missed Grogu and he wanted that connection with Grogu again. Well, now he's back together with him and he still hasn't figured out how to use this thing. And it's probably been like a year. So I want to ask you guys, what's the holdup? Why can't this man use it? Well, like, what's driving the conflict in his mind? I'd love to hear from y'all.
I have no idea, to be honest. I think Jon Favreau says it's been 2 years since the last season. So yeah, it's been a while. Why he doesn't know how to do it yet, I think, is probably more of like a storytelling device. So we get like a, oh, cool moment when he finally like picks it up and is actually like good with it, which is okay. I don't necessarily love it, but in terms of like in canon universe, why he's not good at it, it's because what has he been doing the past 2 years? We have no idea. Like, has he just been sitting there moping without Grogu, or before the Book of Boba Fett happened, or like what was he doing after the Book of Boba Fett? Was he just like just chilling still for another year or so, like watching TV? Like, I don't know what he was doing. Layla, what do you think?
I don't know. It's such a tough one because, like, what else can be on his mind? Like, I know kind of Bo-Katan and Din have had these conversations about how Din was a child of the Watch and they have such different beliefs, and it makes me think, you know, maybe Din seeing Mandalore like that and just hearing all these stories has him questioning, like, everything he knows, like, everything he's been taught by his creed, and Bo-Katan's beliefs are so different to his, and it makes me think, like, because she's so good with the Darksaber and he obviously knows how capable she is, he's just questioning everything he knows about himself and everything that he's been brought up on, and maybe that's getting to him now. He's finally seeing the truth. I don't know. It's a really interesting thing to think about. I'm not sure on that. Jaden, what do you think?
I'm going to be honest. That was a really good way to put it. I don't think I could say it any better, honestly. Between what you and CJ just said, that honestly pretty much sums it up. But I do think that as this season continues to progress, some of those questions will definitely be answered. As CJ was saying, it's definitely something that we're going towards. It's something we've been working towards. Something that Din has very much so been working towards. And yeah, I'm excited. I think that kind of also plays into that redemption a little bit too.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely such an interesting thing, and I hope we do get to learn, like, the actual reason why he's so behind on his Darksaber skills. Like, it's been a while, mate. Like, you could have practiced a bit by now. Like, something is obviously deeply getting to him. Another massive thing that got revealed this episode was the mythosaur at the end of the episode. Now, that creature has been believed to be extinct for a very long time. Bo-Katan's ancestors assumably wiped it out because they were too powerful to have around, but there's one on Mandalore. Could there be multiple? What does this even mean? Because everything she's been brought up on is her ancestors slaying these beasts and being these powerful figures and asserting their dominance, but they didn't. And it's like, did they know that, or were they lying about it to make it look like they did assert their dominance? Like, what do you guys think about this reveal, and how do you think this is going to change Bo-Katan going forward? Because I kind of think that she's not going to tell Din about it. I don't think she's going to tell him, yo, there's a mythosaur down there, like, we need to do something about this. I think she's going to keep quiet about it and kind of refrain herself from being exposed to these fake beliefs that she's been brought up on now. What do you guys think about this? Adam, I'll throw it to you first.
Well, I thought, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Din get pulled down by the mythosaur when he went to take a bathe in the waters? He got pulled down and she jumped in to save him, right? So do we think that? So did he see it or did he not see it? Y'all think?
I don't know, because
I think it was too quick.
Yeah,
it grabbed him by the feet too, right? So like it kind of like
and the only reason I feel like the only reason that's a good point. The only reason Bo-Katan was able to see it is because she had her little light helmet on. She just saw his eye. So that's actually that's amazing. I didn't even think about the fact that Din didn't even see it and that she's the only one. That's amazing. And I feel like with that being the case, I feel like it's in her best interest to definitely not tell him, because that's just more leverage. She already knows that she has this leverage. Like, she can use the dartsaber. And another thing I wrote about in my review is that I think when she woke up, or when Din woke up after that little encounter they had with the mythosaur, I was sitting here like on pins and needles, like, is she going to give that back to him, or is she just going to have that on her side? But she gave it back to him, and like now that's leverage because she knows that he knows that like she could run her shit. She could run his shit with that thing. And now the mythosaur is even more leverage. I love that. I'm like obsessed with this now because I didn't even consider that as a possibility. But I think she would definitely not tell him, because that's just even something. That's something else she can hold over his head. I love that.
Definitely. CJ, what do you think about the whole mythosaur situation?
To Adam's point, I definitely think her not telling them could, again, be another knife in the sword, or another knife in the chest of like, we're moving towards this Din Bo. It seems like inevitable conflict. And I think seeing the mythosaur is only going to make that stronger for Bo. I think this challenges what she already believed, because they both have very different beliefs on the Mandalorians and like the cult. TJ and Garrett talked about this in depth and did a really good job about it on this past week's Agents of Fandom podcast. Go watch. But I do think this is going to be a big eye-opener for Bo-Katan. I'm curious to see how she reacts to seeing the mythosaur. Obviously, it's very important in her lineage and the lineage of the Mandalorians. So I'm curious to see what she does with this knowledge.
Jaden, what about you?
I think it just adds to the pool of holy shit, there's so much going on in this right now. I think there's with Mando, going through his stuff. Now Bo-Katan's going to start going through her stuff, and it's just like when this all comes to its close, when this all gets to its climax, I should say, it's going to be insane. And that is what I'm getting from all of this stuff, because I'm not as knowledgeable in like the Mandalorian stuff, and especially like with the mythosaur and everything, but everything you're saying just makes me believe that there is some crazy shit about to happen. And I don't think any of us are ready for it, honestly, because we were misled to think that this was going to be, him redeeming himself as a Mandalorian. No, I think it's going to go much deeper than that, and it's going to be insane.
Yeah. I wrote a piece for the site, kind of like everything you need to know about the mythosaur and its history in Mandalore, and its kind of symbolism to the clans and things like that. But I'm pretty sure it's chapter 3 of The Mandalorian, Queel says to Din, when he's trying to ride a blurg, he's like, your ancestors rode the great mythosaur, like, and you can't even ride a blurg, like, come on. Do you think that whoever kind of is inching towards to be the leader of Mandalore, whether it's Bo or Din, could we see them riding a mythosaur? Like, I can picture it now, them being on the 100%. Back of one, and just like, that scene is going to be amazing, and if we get it, that is going to be the end of my life.
And those Funko Pops are going to sell like crazy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's going to be so good. So unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about from this episode?
One thing I want to talk about a little bit more, they talked about in the Fandom podcast too, which I thought was really interesting, is do we think Din starts to question the cult a little bit more he's a part of after he's bathed in these waters and things don't start to like change or whatever? Do you think we'll start to see him take his mask off more, or maybe start abandoning more towards the side of like what Bo-Katan thinks of the Mandalorian?
I hope so. I hope he takes it off more. That would be great. I would really enjoy that.
Well, I think, and the funny thing is, I meant to tie this back into that question that I asked you guys. I think he definitely is kind of working his way away from the way, kind of thing. And, talking about what he could potentially be struggling with the dark saber, to tie it back into what you're saying, I think what's struggling for him is that he's fighting with like knowing that this isn't what he should be following. And I think we could be in for a really, really big moment in the second half of the series where the thing that makes him realize like and uplifts his ability with that sword is that he has to save Grogu or do something for Grogu, because that's what really matters at the core of the show. And for Din, like that's the connection for him is all with Grogu. He doesn't even, the way and all this stuff, and the Mandalorians, like, Bo-Katan makes fun of him in this episode. She's like, when he's not even knowing how to eat the pog soup, and she's like, do you realize the irony in that? Like, you're following all this and you're not even, she's basically saying you're not even one of us. So I feel like he is most definitely, as this season goes on, going to kind of abandon that ideology of the way and realize like that his relationship and his bond with Grogu is like, that's the only thing that really matters.
That's interesting. I could totally see like we get to a point where he has to choose between the way and like saving Grogu. And that would be a huge moment of conflict, because obviously he went through all this trouble to redeem himself for the first time he took off his mask, but also he took off his mask before to save Grogu. So I don't know it would be that much of a hesitation. However, I think another one that could be really interesting too is having to choose between the way and saving maybe a Bo-Katan. And I think that could be interesting, because then you start to get into the real moral conflict of this woman completely denies everything we go against, but still is essentially one of us. And it's either saving her or being a part of this guild. And I think the armor could play a huge part in that. So I'm really interested to see where we go from here in terms of that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And like you said, like the first time he broke the way was for Grogu. He took his helmet off so that he could get the coordinates to Moff Gideon's ship to go save his child. Like, of course he's gonna do it again if he has to. Like, that connection is too strong to not. And it's just, this season is just gonna be like mind blowing, and I'm just so excited to see the rest of it.
Excited.
But that will wrap up our Mandalorian episode 2 conversation. I'm very excited to see episode 3 and cover that next week. I feel like it's just gonna get more and more interesting every week, and I'm very excited for it. Now on to the main event. The Last of Us Season 1 concluded this weekend. We got episode 9. The season finale. It's here, it's out, it's over for now. Also, today, Neil and Craig have confirmed that the part 2 of the game will be more than one season long, which I feel like I have so many thoughts on this. But let's talk about episode 9 first. We'll go through and give our initial reactions. Jaden, I will start with you. What did you think of episode 9 of The Last of Us?
I loved it, honestly, and I have seen the gameplay. I kind of knew what was happening. I knew where we were headed. And I think it kind of just wraps it up in a nice little bow without breaking my heart too bad. So that's a plus always, not going out of this with a broken heart, as we have with the last 8 episodes. But yeah, I really had a good time. And I'm excited for the next season.
Adam, what about you? How was episode 9 for you?
I can't even put into words what having this series even means to me. Layla, you and I talked a lot about this leading up to the season, and then especially in the early parts. Like, these games are such a huge part of my life. Like, and The Last of Us Part 2 got me through like a huge part of the pandemic, like early in the summer of 2020. And I've played both the games at least like 5 to 6 times for the second one, 10 to 12, and the finale to me was just like, it was perfect because they followed along with everything that was like perfect in the finale of the game. And Craig Mazin talked about that a little bit. I don't know if you guys watched the inside the episode at the end. He was like, this was one of the easiest episodes because we just followed the game, because like the ending of it is so good. And I just think they couldn't have done a better job. But one thing I am, the Joel, the attempted suicide stuff just hit me like an absolute freight train. The giraffe, his conversation with Ellie at the end. This was like a perfect episode of television to me. I could not have been any happier, and I just can't believe this show exists. I absolutely loved it.
I'm 100% with you on that. This episode was But after seeing the game and after playing the game and just seeing it be brought to life all over again has been one of the most like beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. And just having this show and it being so perfect and it staying so true to the story has been just one of the best things to witness ever. But CJ, I think you have a few conflicting thoughts on this episode, so I'm gonna pass it to you.
I will say I did like this episode. I thought it was a fair conclusion to the season. I just thought, in terms of the 8 episodes that came before it, this was on the weaker side. I do like a lot of stuff they did. Seeing the drafts was cool. The conversation between Joel and Ellie was very powerful. But most of this episode felt rushed to me. I watched the gameplay for what this chapter would be about last week, and there was a couple things that I thought were cool in the game that they weren't included. I thought them having to go through clickers to get to the hospital could have been another addition of success or suspense that could have added to this episode, because it was a really short episode too. It's like 48 minutes. I thought the scene where they went underwater through the bus and Joel went down there to save Ellie, or Ellie went down to save Joel, I thought that would have been really cool to include, but I get why they didn't include that, like logistically, like filming underwater is not easy and stuff like that too. But I just thought stuff like that could have been cool. But overall, I really do love this show. I'm going to miss it so bad for the next year or however long it takes them to make the second season. And I cannot wait to see where we go from here, because it ended on a pretty rough cliffhanger.
Yeah, I do get like where you're coming from. Like, I guess most of the arguments about those points I've been seeing is like the practical side of it would not have been like logical to do. Like, obviously the underwater bus scene, like I feel like that would have been very difficult to film. Obviously I would have loved to see it, like, but I don't think HBO could quite pull that off the best way. But I really enjoyed this episode. Definitely there were some moments that had me just in tears and just like in love with the show so bad. Joel and Ellie in this episode had some incredible moments, especially the moment that Adam touched on where Joel was talking about his suicide attempt after losing Sarah. That was a detail that was not involved in the game at all, but the addition to that I feel like was so well executed. Like, it's such a deep subject to even bring up in TV shows, but they did it so much justice, and Pedro in that scene was just incredible, and Bella Ramsey just listening to him, like when he said like there's no story, but she was just listening to him because that's all he needed, someone to listen to him. And it was just this huge deep thing, and it's just such a heavy thing, but they did it so good, and it was one of my favorite scenes of the entire episode. But let's go around and say our favorite moment from the episode, because there was a lot that happened, and I know some pieces from the game were lifted directly, some lines, some scenes. What was everyone's absolute favorite moment of the episodes? Jaden, I'll start with
you. I think, honestly, weirdly enough, one of my favorite scenes was when they're about to exit the hospital, and he's having that last interaction with Marlene, and you could just see on his face that like the conversation's over. The conversation's been over. He's been over it, but she's still going. She thinks she has him, and it's just like, bang, next scene, Ellie's in the car, Joel's driving, no regrets whatsoever, and they cut back and they show exactly what happened. I really like that part just because it was just like, I don't know. I feel like Joel has been through so much at this point. It's just like, I don't care. I have Ellie. We're good. I'm good. I'm pieced away. I can go home now, you know? I like that a lot.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites too. CJ, what about you? What did you like from this episode?
I really loved the opening of this episode. Seeing Ashley Johnson as Ellie's mom was so cool. As you talked about last week, it's a way for her to birth the character again after voicing her in the game. I thought the scene was executed really well. It kind of explains why Ellie is immune, which is really cool too. And it also continues to evolve that relationship between Marlene and Ellie and Ellie's mom, and why they're so tied together connectedly. I thought Merle Dandridge, who plays Marlene in the show and in the game, was great as Marlene. I thought she slayed the character. She understood the character really well. I thought she executed it well. And Ashley Johnson was phenomenal in that scene. Fighting off the clicker while giving birth was great gripping TV. I thought that was easily the best part of the episode for me. I thought it was executed well, and it greatly played into the emotions of the finale.
Yeah, I spoke about this last week, how excited I was to see Ashley back as Ellie's mom, and that cut from Ashley being Anna and to Ellie, they look like they can actually be related, and it is crazy. Like, Ashley will always be Ellie, like, she is Ellie, and just seeing Bella straight after that, oh, I can't even put it into words, like, how incredible that was. Adam, what about you? What was your favorite moment from this?
Well, this was not knowing was going to be asked this question. I just about had a heart attack trying to think about what my favorite one would be. And CJ, I'm actually glad you picked the opening because I had 3 wrangled in my mind real quick, and that was one of them. The other 2, the giraffe scene is hard to not put it first, but my mind even is just going crazy right now. But I've got to say, it's not the giraffe scene for me. As much as I love that scene and seeing just like the dialogue, especially lifted right out of the game and just adapted like one for one. And I was in awe the very first time I saw that on my screen, and then was in awe again watching it last night and today. But for me, Layla, you touched on this in your review, what you called Joel's rampage. From the moment at the bottom of that staircase, like the split in that staircase, when he kills those 2 guards and that music comes on, and it's not quite a one shot, but there's only like 2 or 3 cuts, and you don't really feel like it's not, because they could have shot that poorly and there could have been 25, 30 cuts. It's like just following him through the hallways, and the score is just like building and building, and you can see like there's just no emotion on his face other than determination. I was just like mesmerized. Like I felt like when that scene came and went, like I was just on another planet for the whole duration, because I was like, somebody could have broken into my apartment and just been out with all my stuff, and I was just like so locked in on it, I wouldn't have even noticed. So for me, it's got to be that, like what you like to call Joel's rampage. That's what I'm going to stick with as my number one.
That's such a good moment, and just like you said, like he's just driven by the determination to save Ellie. That's all that matters to him right now. He can't lose anyone else. He just needs her back, and him just wiping through all these fireflies, it was incredible. And Pedro's Joel, I've praised him every week, I praise him every day, I praise him every minute of my life. He pulled this off incredibly. I cannot praise it enough. Like, there are not the words to describe how happy I am about this. Like, this is one of my favorite Pedro roles, and there are a lot that I love, but him as Joel is perfection. I loved it so much. And another one of my favorite parts was him, explaining at the end about Sarah to Ellie and saying how they used to love going on hikes together and that. And as a line earlier in the episode as well, where Ellie says, "Time heals all wounds, I guess." And Joel says, "It wasn't time that did it," hinting that it was Ellie that healed him, which is just one of the most heartbreaking things and beautiful things I've ever witnessed. Like, I'm literally about to cry thinking about it. It was just so amazing. Another thing I wanted to touch on was Ashley Johnson said this in an interview, speaking about the very last scene where Ellie says, "Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies was true," and Joel says, "I swear," and Ellie just says, "Okay." Ashley says that Ellie knows that Joel is lying to her. She understands that that's not what happened, but he's choosing to lie about it. And Ashley explains that from that moment forward, she accepts that, fine, if you want to lie to me about it, lie to me, but our relationship is going to change from now on. And I just think that is such an incredible detail, because a lot of people might just look past that and be like, okay, she said okay. She believes him, that's it. They're going to go on and carry on, and maybe one day she'll find out he was lying. But no, Ellie knows that he was lying. And I feel like that is such an interesting thing to be in the depths of what she says. And I just thought that was amazing, and I wanted to bring that up.
I kind of want to dive into that, that topic a little bit more. That choice that Joel made in the hospital to save Ellie and kill everyone there, basically erasing the chance for there to be a cure to keep his relationship with Ellie. Obviously, Joel, and Marlene, I think, were both in the wrong, because Marlene wasn't going to give Ellie a choice. She was just going to do it for her. And Joel wasn't going to give Ellie the choice either. He did it for her, as we saw. So going forward, I have not watched a minute of The Last of Us 2 gameplay. I have no idea what happens. But one thing I would be really curious to see is if Ellie is faced with that decision, what she would choose. Mm. And I don't know if we're going to get that in the second season, but I really hope we do. And I think that could make for a really, really interesting story point in the game.
That's really interesting, because I guess Ellie's whole ideology in the past few episodes has been, I have to make a difference, my life has to mean something, whatever it takes, like, I have to try to make the world a better place. And it's just so, like, conflicting, because you're like, yeah, she would want to do the right thing, but obviously she wouldn't want to lose her life over it. It's just such, like, no one knows, like, we don't know where, well, we kind of know where it's going to go if you've played the second game. But for, like, casual players, like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, anything could happen. It's so, like, complex to think about. And I'm just, like, I kind of envy the people that don't know what's going to happen, so they can just be theorizing all this stuff. Because it's just such, like, an interesting story. And to see other people's perspectives, like, that's why I've enjoyed doing this so much, like, seeing your guys' perspective on what could come, like, in the second season. Knowing already what happens has been just, like, so exciting and also terrifying, because I'm just sat here like, yeah, definitely. Like, it's been, like, so fun. Another thing I do want to touch on, though, Laura Bailey had a cameo in this episode. Laura is the voice actress of Abby in the second game. Abby is a very important character. I won't touch on her relevance for spoiler sake, but she is a very, very key character. And seeing her in this scene, even for a second, was amazing. I just love how much of the original cast they've got back to this episode. Adam, how did you find seeing Laura in this episode?
I didn't even really know about it until after, because if I'm not mistaken, she was one of the nurses, right, in the surgery room. Yeah. And I didn't know about that till after, and I was just like, oh dear. And even it's so hard to go into this knowing everything that happens, because there was a lot on my mind when Joel busted into that surgery room, as Layla, I'm sure there was with yours as well. But Jaden, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the second game, but I was just there was so much on my mind. Oh, you're nothing at all. Okay, no, so I'm not gonna say anything else. I'm not gonna say anything else. The only thing I wanted to say, I know you asked me about Laura Bailey. I wanted to bounce back a little bit to what you said. We're talking about earlier, CJ, about Joel's decision to do that. And I think obviously the right thing to do is to let Ellie decide. Like 100, like the pound for pound right thing to do is this is her body. It should be her decision. And then but people are so quick. I'm a little bit of a Joel Miller defender myself.
Me too, people are so Adam, quick. Me too.
People are so quick to just be like, that was so wrong. But you got to think, like, from Joel's perspective, I know we've seen him come to trust Ellie, but he does not trust anybody else still. And in his mind, it's such wishful thinking for him to be like, oh, well, even if they do that, yeah, I'm sure the cure would work out. Like, to him, there's just no reality. Like, if it involves killing her, it doesn't matter. Like, even if it's 100% certainty, he's not going to do it. But I don't feel like Joel can even imagine that that's going to work out. Like, I don't think in his head he's even thinking like that oh my gosh, I'm 100%, I just screwed humanity. Because he's in the back of his head, he's probably like, I don't know whether they were telling me the truth anyway. And even if they were, that's like such wishful thinking of them to think that that's just guaranteed going to work out with like the knowledge that they have now. It's like they probably don't. So I'm gonna defend Joel Miller till I absolutely cannot anymore. And I think although it should have been Ellie's choice to make, obviously with it being her body and her brain and everything, I think Joel made the right choice, even if it did mean killing a bunch of innocent people.
What do you guys think about Joel's choice?
I haven't even thought about that perspective, Adam. Like thinking, because I guess the Fireflies have been presented in this show. I don't know if they're presented in the game similar, but they're kind of like, we're unsure about them, because in the episodes with Riley, Ellie alludes to them as kind of like a terrorist force almost. Like, even though she knows her government sucks, they go too far most of the time, and sometimes they cross the line between morally right and wrong. So I guess in terms of like what Joel's experienced in his time with the QZ and all that stuff, he probably has similar thoughts to what Ellie was thinking in those conversations with Riley. So he probably does not trust the Fireflies much at all. So especially because they took his brother away from him too. I mean, that's why Tommy and him got separated. So that's a really interesting point to think about. That adds there's so many layers to this show, which is why it's so incredible.
It's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
It's like actually
Just wait.
hurts my brain.
Yeah, just wait.
Jaden, what did you think about Joel's decision?
Honestly, I would have done it. I would have done it too, especially if it's for someone that I care about and someone that is potentially like another. Especially after that conversation, like you saved me. You know, you helped me get to where I am. Like you helped me, right? And so that being the case, I don't even think it was for selfish reasons either. I think he just loves her so much that it's like she deserves to live. Like I especially like Adam was saying, for a maybe a possibility of it being able to actually cure people. It's like, what if it doesn't? He wouldn't be able to live with himself, and I don't think anybody would be able to live with themselves, right? I do think he should have maybe been a little more honest about it, but at the end of the day, like he's a father figure. At the end of the day, you know, he's gonna do whatever he can to protect his child, especially if he knows that by telling her that, she's more than likely going to be like, okay, I want to do it. You know, at that point, it's more for selfish reasons, but you know, father figures.
And the quote you said that Ashley said was really interesting, Layla, because the way that Ellie knows that he's lying, I didn't even really think about that. When she says okay, she's accepting of it, but like you said, she that relationship will be damaged from that lie and her knowing that it's a lie. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops, and if she is the one that calls him out on it, or if someone else does. So, because it alluded to, I don't know if they directly said it, but it alluded to, they're headed back to Tommy's town, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where they're headed. Okay. So that'll be interesting to see, and maybe he tells Tommy about it, and we get his opinions on it, because in the episode we saw with him and Tommy, he was very open about everything that happened with Tommy. So I think if there's one person on the planet that Joel trusts more than Ellie, it would be Tommy. So seeing those two have that conversation again, him and Pedro and Gabriel back in the same room again, I can't wait for it. It's going to be great television.
Yeah, I think the coming seasons are definitely going to be like some of the best TV adaptation we're going to see in a long time. Like the storyline of part 2 is one of the best things I've ever experienced ever. And I'm just so excited for everyone, like, even if they haven't watched gameplay, they don't know what's happening, I'm so excited for them to experience it for the first time, even if the first time you are experiencing it isn't the source material, it's the show. Doesn't matter. The story is so incredible from any perspective. And the viewership for The Last of Us has been crazy. Like, there have been millions of people tuning in every week. It's gone up every week, just like another few 100,000 million, like by the end of it. It's insane. It's the biggest show in the world right now, and it just makes me so happy that so many people are aware of this story, and it's making people want to go play the games because they are just the most incredible thing. And I'm just very happy that this show exists, and I've loved talking about it every week. I've loved writing about it every week, and I know that we're all going to be continuing to talk about it for a long time. Last thing I want to ask you all, very simple, but it might also be a very hard question. What's your favorite episode? Anyone?
I'll start. I think the episode that hit me most emotionally, and I still don't think anything else is compared to it, has been episode 3. Bill and Frank, their story, I genuinely think that is one of the best, like, those are, like I said on the episode when we covered that, those are two characters we met for that hour and a half. We will never see them again. We knew them for an hour and a half, and those two characters meant so much to me by the time we were finished with that episode. Nick Offerman, I think, will be in serious contention for a Best Supporting Actor in the Golden Globes
100%.
for an hour and a half of television. If that doesn't speak to the power of that episode, I don't know what is. Everyone I've talked to, I mean, this has been from like manly men to womanly women. Everyone who has watched that episode has bawled their eyes out. I don't know if there's ever been something so universally had that much of an emotional reception for. And for that reason, I think episode 3 will probably be my favorite. It is my favorite episode of the season. I think it'll be hard to top for the whole series.
I like that. Episode 3 is definitely up there for me. I think my favorite of the whole season, for some reason, is episode 6. I have such an emotional connection to episode 6. Just seeing Gabriel Luna back and Joel being so vulnerable in front of Tommy, and Joel and Ellie having their lost conversation in that bedroom was incredible. Yeah. I mean, I loved all of them, and it's so hard to pick a favorite because I genuinely do not believe that there are weaker episodes, but I think 6 is my favorite. What about you two?
So I'll go.
Toss to you. You go ahead, buddy.
I think that up until last week, I would have said episode 3, but the last episode, episode 8, was so good and such an overall like action. There was emotion, there was chaos, there was calm. Like it literally hit every possible point that it could have. And I was talking about this with someone else, and they kind of just like opened my mind to that. And it's true. Episode 8 was literally so good. It has all the components that you could possibly want in a good episode of television. Even great episode of television. So did episode 3, but I just think it had that like the little tiny edge. Yeah, but I'd say episode 8.
Adam, I want to change the question for you. What has been your favorite episode for show reasons, and what has been your favorite episode in terms of game adaptation, accuracy, things like that?
Oh, okay. So, for show reasons, oh my gosh, this is such a tough. I've been sweating since you brought this question. You guys have all gone through, and I've had plenty of time, and I'm still sweating. So for that question, for show adaptation, I gotta say 3 because one, it's the biggest change, but that I think like start to finish is the best. And at least in my opinion, oh my gosh, this is such a loaded question. That it's got to be 3 for specifically the show adaptation, just because that's a story we didn't get to see at all, but it's not something that like I truly believe that's what happened, but that's something that happened. I know it's a little bit different because, you know, in the game, I guess I can say this now if we're talking about the past, like in the game, when Joel gets there, Bill's still alive and Frank has passed. So it's a little bit different, but it's not like, I truly believe in my head now that they had that kind of relationship in the game, even though we never get to see Frank, but I truly believe that they got to have that kind of relationship. So I think for show adaptation, I'll say 3. And I think, for the game, as somebody that loves the games, this may come out of left field. It's hard to pick against the finale, but you and I talked about this a little bit a while back too. Episode 5 for me, the Sam and Henry storyline is something in the game that hits me like a train every single time I play through, because and even more, Kevon Woodard being an actual like deaf actor and like everybody learning to actually sign adds so much more to it. I mean, that's obviously not something that was in the game, but they still captured their relationship perfectly, and how Joel was able to like start to trust the two of them in a very short period of time. I think a lot of because what he saw in Ellie and Henry's relationship, that like, or Ellie and Sam's relationship. I'm sorry, not Ellie and Henry's relationship. But for me, I think I'm going to say in terms of like how I feel about the game to the show, I'm going to say episode 5, just because, and I know the finale is probably a little bit better of like a game, like 1-to-1 adaptation, because they pretty much pull everything that happens like in the last hour, minus a few like infected things, but just personal bias, like the Sam and Henry stuff, may be my favorite thing, like in the whole first game, first show type thing. So I'm going to say episode 5. That was an awesome question and a very hard one.
Sam and Henry was definitely one of the most heartbreaking, amazing storylines ever. It hits me every time in the game, and as soon as we saw Sam and Henry were gonna be in the show, I mean, obviously they were gonna be, but when it got confirmed, I was just like, oh, I'm not ready to see this again. And they pulled it off so well, and it was just as heartbreaking in live action. But that concludes our The Last of Us chat. That's it. We're done for now until season 2, whenever that may be. Pedro has said maybe they could start filming by the end of the year. It's not soon enough. I'm gonna need it as soon as possible because the next year or so is just going to be painful. I know I'm going to play through the second game probably 100 times before we even get to season 2.
Same.
And I highly, highly recommend that if you have not played the second game or even watched the gameplay, please do. It is one of the most beautiful things ever created. I cannot rave about it enough. But unless you guys have anything else to add, I think
I just want to say, before we sign off on The Last of Us for the last time for a while on the show, I want to point out Pedro and Bella get so much love for how good they are on the show, and rightfully so. But the supporting cast in this show is equally as good. In the first few episodes, Anna Torv as Tess was phenomenal. As you mentioned, Adam, Lamar Johnson and Kevion Woodard as Henry and Sam, some of the best performances in the whole show. Melanie Linsky, despite us hating her, Kathleen was a great, hateable character. She was phenomenal. Nico Parker as Sarah, great. Merle Dandridge as Marlene, just so much to love in this cast. And they all deserve all the love because this show really delivered, and it is going to win so many awards, and I cannot wait to see it.
It is going to sweep Emmy season. And also shout out Gabriel Luna because he is the most accurate Tommy I could have ever wished for.
Yeah.
He
absolutely
just killed it as Tommy. He was incredible. But yeah, it's over for now. And I can't believe it. And I'm really sad about it.
I'm sad.
But it also...
This is making me sad.
I know. This is actually so sad. And like the double Pedro features are over now. We've only got the Mandalorian to keep us going for like another 6 weeks, and then what do we do after that? What do we do then?
Cry.
We rewatch everything. We cry, definitely. But that will wrap up episode 10 of Fandom Academy. Thanks for sticking around to talk The Last of Us, Mandalorian, and Oscars with us. Where can the people find all of you, Jaden?
You can find me on socials at jaden.cmduran, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. But speaking of TikTok, you can also check out the Agents Fandom TikTok. I'm going to get my shit together and start posting more on there, so that's going to be exciting. And yeah, just check that out.
CJ, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at cjdar_, where I will spend my time talking about everything I love for the next few weeks. And if you check out the brand new, fancy and shiny Agents of Fandom website, I got to talk about one of my mini husbands, Glenn Powell, in an article coming out pretty soon about some of the stars to look out for in the next coming year. So make sure you check that out.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us today, talking about everything Pedro Pascal and Oscars related. Where can the people find you?
First off, thank you guys so much for having me. I thanked y'all at the top, and I'm going to thank you again because you three are awesome. You guys have got like the best thing going over here. I had such a blast coming on to talk with you guys. The people can find me on Twitter at Adam Blevins _ and then make sure to go follow the Agents of Fandom on every socials. I've got reviews of The Mandalorian coming out every Wednesday, and now for the next 9 to 10 weeks, reviews of Ted Lasso coming out every Wednesday as well. So make sure to stay tuned to agentsoffandom.com. Follow the Agents of Fandom on socials as well. And that's it.
Yeah. This was such a fun episode. Make sure you're following us at Fandom Academy on all the socials and hit our notification bell so you don't miss out on any new episodes. You can find all the shows under Agents of Fandom on every podcast network, like the Agents of Fandom show, Ticket to Reality, Listen 3000, us, Fandom Academy, and The Critics, and also Damon's Comic Corner over on YouTube. We have the shiny new website, like CJ mentioned. Make sure you go check it out. There's some amazing new features on there. You can shop our merch at aofandom.com. And next week, as I mentioned earlier, we will be joined by Kozapi Films to cover Shazam! Fury of the Gods and The Mandalorian Episode 3. Adam, thank you for joining us. CJ and Jaden, thanks for slaying with me. And thanks for hanging out with us. We will see you next week for episode 11. Peace.